I'm Robert Timmons, and you're watching Weekly Words.
Stop me, oh, somebody stop me, stop me, stop me, please, somebody stop me, stop me, stop me, oh, somebody stop me.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for checking out this week's episode. I pray that this last week has been truly amazing for you. Let's go ahead and get started with this week's topic of what are you planting? So there's been multiple times where I've paralleled our lives to that of a plant or a tree or something growing or something going into harvest. And that's because I feel like it can parallel to multiple parts in our life, right? So in the past, I talked about the whole idea that God creates trees, not tables, and also the best time to plant a tree, and a couple others as well. But today I want to talk about the idea of what we're planting in our life, because sometimes it can be subtle and it can be subconscious, right? And so on one hand, we have the idea of, if your plant in your life gets planted with, anger or frustration or rejection or failure or lust or love or heartbreak or anything positive or negative, right? It's going to blossom out into some kind of action, some kind of reaction, some kind of thought, right? And that's kind of what we talked about back in week 23 when I talked about processing your emotions and the idea of recognizing why you feel a certain type of way and going down to the root cause of that feeling and replacing it with something positive. Today, I want to talk about more in the idea of what we allow to pour into our lives, right? The things that we hear and the things that we see and the things that we experience, right? So this will be similar to the week where I talked about who's in your corner and how their actions or their comments can actually affect how you think. And the example I gave there was the idea of how I don't curse, but I was around people who was cursing, and so I started to have the urge to curse because I was hearing it all the time. So it's almost today, this is almost like a meeting of those 2 weeks put together, and what are you planning? So I think right now, what we see in media is really, really a big thing that is planting ideas and planting emotions in our minds and in our hearts, right? So the things that you listen to or watch on a daily basis are really going to be affecting your character and your judgment and your identity, whether you recognize it or not. So a perfect example is actually, for me, I'm really big on, first of all, I'm really big on music and I'm really big on TV. I really like the arts and the idea that you can portray so many different stories and emotions through these things, whether it be a TV show, a movie, or a song, right? But really they start to, like I said, they always start to affect how we think. So for example, I know for me, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of you watching, whenever we would watch those high school movies or shows on Disney or on TV or in the movie theaters, we thought whenever we went to high school, that's what high school was going to be. But whenever we got there, we found out that wasn't always the case. Like there was another layer that TV just didn't tell us about, right? Or there was this whole layer that was completely fantasized on TV. So I think the same thing happens for other things in our life, especially if it is something that we have not yet experienced. So one thing in particular, I think there's a lot of songs and a lot of TV shows that are, being shown right now that, really depict the types of relationships that a man and a woman have or significant others, have these days. And it's really diluting the value of, relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, sexual interaction, and all these different things, because there's all these songs that are like really uplifting the idea of, sleeping around with multiple different people and all these different, sexual acts. And there's all these different TV shows where all these different friends groups have like slept with multiple people. I was watching this one show the other day and I realized, I was like, wait a second. In this circle of friends and acquaintances, 3 of these girls have slept with the same guy. And it was just kind of baffling to me because for so long it was just kind of accepted. Well, in the show it was just accepted. And in my mind it was accepted until I remembered that all that happened. And I was just thinking, I don't really think that would be okay in the real world, but like this show is kind of diluting that experience. Now, I know that, fiction and reality are 2 completely separate things and that TV is not reality. We have to separate that. I got you. But all I am suggesting today is that what we watch and what we listen to is subconsciously affecting our heart and our mind, right? What we watch and what we listen to, they're actually planting seeds in our heart and in our mind, and they're going to blossom into something, right? They can blossom into character traits. They can blossom into how we review relationships. They can blossom into how we view the world, and that can really start to affect how we act, how we think, how we treat other people, all these different things, which won't necessarily show face right now, but after months and after years of watching, listening to the same thing, you're going to slowly start to change and adapt to what you're feeding your body. So I think we definitely have to be mindful of that. Another example is I was watching Luke Cage on Netflix, which is one of the Marvel shows on Netflix, and there's this one, no spoilers, I promise. There was this one scene where one character slit another character's throat. And for me, because I had been watching the show and I had been watching other Marvel films or Marvel shows on Netflix, I had seen that before, right? But my grandma had happened to walk into the room right before that happened, and she was on her iPad, and she looked up right as it was happening, and she jumped and was just thrown off. But me, being someone who had watched it, it was just, I wasn't fazed. It was something I was used to, right? Now, of course, if that happened in real life, I don't know what I'd do. I definitely wouldn't be fazed. But I think that just kind of showcases that, what we allow into our life, what we plant into our life definitely affects our thought and our reaction. My grandma, who wasn't used to that, jumped and thought something was wrong. But me, being used to it, it was just another day. So I think we all have to be mindful of what we allow our ears to hear and we allow our eyes to see, because we never know how it's going to affect us in the long run. Be mindful of the seeds that you are planting, whether they are intentional or unintentional, because they are always going to blossom and bloom into something. And do you want it to blossom into a tree, a fruitful tree and a beautiful flower, or do you want it to blossom into something ugly and weeds and something that's really going to diminish your character? So be mindful of what you will allow to be planted in your life. All right, so question time. Just like every other week, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions. And again, I encourage you to think through them by yourself and also with your accountability partner to see in which ways you can grow and which ways you've been growing so far throughout 2018. All right, so let's get started. Question 1. What are some things that you are surrounded by that affects your character and judgment, whether it be positive or negative? What are some things that you are surrounded by that can affect your character or judgment, whether it be positive or negative? Question 2. What are some new things that you can be surrounded by or plant in your life that can affect your character and your judgment in a positive way? What are some positive things that you can surround yourself by or plant in your life that can affect your character and judgment in a positive way? Thank you for checking out this week's episode of Weekly Words. I pray that you thoroughly enjoyed it and got something positive from it. If you have any suggestions for things for me to talk about in the future, feel free to email me at weeklywordsrt@gmail.com. Again, that's weeklywordsrt@gmail.com. All right, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you back here next time.
Stop me, oh somebody stop me, please somebody stop me, oh somebody stop me, and Lord if I'm doing it wrong, then please stop me.